you go up those ramps and catch air, Jay, I don't know.
Yeah, especially the city hall ramp.
Oh, that thing is scary. Yeah, that one makes me nervous.
ADA requirement.
Yeah, that's Mr. Toad's wild ride.
I think so. On our project list, I think.
It is.
Engebretson. Start right at 6.
Through this.
Yeah. I have a few questions about the rules of governance. Just a few. It's about the attendance. It says inform the mayor, city administrator, city recorder. Is that an and or an or? I couldn't figure out. Do I have to tell all three of you?
It has to be an or, so I've never.
It's us know typically, but once in a while, people will let me know, or they'll let the city administrator know, and then we communicate among ourselves. But you're correct on that. Is it an and or an or?
And I just wanted to, because the English language is extremely important.
It's so important.
I appreciate the clear it can be.
No.
better.
You like black and white, Sammy?
I mean,
You like black and
I
white?
do like black and white.
It's amazing to me.
The Heritage Committee meet here,
Yes, sir.
okay, because I've never been to
Yes.
meetings.
They're a great committee.
Liaison.
Because you know it is tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
Just.
Planning.
No rush.
I tell you in person.
It's amazing to me how many people in public life don't know how to speak well.
All
My
right.
theory
I'm
is
not in
they all
public
went Catholic
Well,
schools.
it's 6 o'clock. So I think I will call us to order. I'll call the April 8th City Council meeting to order at 6 p.m. Thank you all for being here. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and live streamed. And please make sure all your mics are on and that your microphone is where it's picking up your voice well. For the sake of our transcriptionist. So tonight we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilor Engebretson, would you lead us in that, please?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sammy, would you do roll call, please?
So we have Mayor Bell, Councillor Bauman,
Present.
Councillor Engelbretson,
Here.
Councillor Lehman,
Here.
Councillor Myers,
Here.
Councillor Smith,
Here.
Councillor Wells.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. I don't really have any comments for tonight other than to say thank you for all of you being here and braving this blustery day and rain and wind and all kinds of things. Hopefully we have a few more days like Saturday very soon or Sunday. Which day was it that it was so nice? Sunday. So we'll just kind of move on through our agenda. Sammy, are there any proposed changes to the agenda tonight?
Yes. Everybody's got a red folder in front of them. No changes to the agenda, it's just some extra handouts. So the first one is agenda item number 8, a subcommittee memo to go with the staff report.
No, I have not.
Then we also have the police quarterly reports, which goes with agenda number 9. And your city administrator report, which is under agenda item 11.
Thank you very much.
I may have read
Do we
this.
have anyone signed up for public
I
comment?
think I did read this one.
Okay. You. And is Mr. Newman ready to speak now?
First thing, okay.
And you state your name and your address for the record, please.
Scott Newman, 91-173 North Miller Street, Gilbert.
Thank you.
So I'm here to speak on water, which is expensive, and there's probably very good reasons for it. So I wanted to ask a question and or make a suggestion. In the winter months, we pay, just went up, 156 to 164. And I don't know the exact number, so I'm going to throw out some hypotheticals. Let's say we pay for 10,000 gallons and we only use 5,000. And what I'd like to suggest, in the summertime, I'll use more than 10,000. My water bill goes up to 200, 300 because I take care of my garden and my lawn. But could I bank the 5,000 in the winter that I'm not using and spend them in the summer when I need them? Because I'm paying for those gallons, but I'm getting charged, and when I go over, I get charged. And so I'd like, because it's a pretty high water bill. Both Eugene and Sweet Home, which I know about, are approximately 1/3 of ours. We don't have the same system. Obviously, we have a more expensive system that was designed. So that's part of the puzzle, but I'd still make a suggestion or ask a question. Can we do that?
Well, thank you for that information. I can tell you we are certainly having conversations about how we can perhaps adjust or look at water in a different way.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Counselor, Mr. Hanks, do you have anything that any questions or anything that we could run through you?
I talk offline. We just remember the total bill that is received is water. Still valid issues. Pressure, we did talk about that. Bring that. As you're driving or get out of the base speed, kind of more through base speed. That's an inevitable. That's part of the bill. Water. Carefully. All the stuff that we get into it.
And it is my understanding that many cities around our area are going to be increasing their rates because costs have increased and our water system and wastewater system, all our businesses that have to have rates that go in to keep them going. Did you have a question for Mr. Hanks?
Do we have the ability to look at and see how many rate customers are in that situation of paying for 10, but only using 5?
Yes. So we have all accounts are metered. 100 is Party board. Great record. Water. Then figure it out. Our that service. All of that. Okay. Part of urban property. That methodology. Lots. I would say that that's the different way of doing.
So there. Short answer is, we are looking at it and it's gonna take us a little bit to untangle and we thank you for coming tonight.
Okay, paying by the gallon. That's no simple. The meter's measured by the gallon. you know,
Yeah.
So
So we'll
charge me by the gallon.
we'll be looking at all of a whole bunch of different options
Okay.
in the near future.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Okay. Now, anyone else signed up to speak? Didn't want to miss anybody. Consent agenda. Have you all had an opportunity to take a look at your packets? And do you have anything to add or correct, minor corrections? If not, I will accept a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Mayor Bell, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Counselor Bowman, do I have a second?
Seconded.
By Counselor Wells. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. The motion passes 6-0. And now we're moving on to, let's see, here. We have a special guest tonight.
Yes, I'll have Chief Larson introduce our special guest that is a known quantity around City Hall and the community. But Larry can start us off.
My name is Dan Miller. Dan voted to Sergeant with the Colorado Police Department.
All right.
A little bit about Dan, he started as a dispatcher in 2001 in Oak Ridge. Military in the Air Force, was a VP with the Air Force. Came back to Oak Ridge as a cadet. He was under. He became a reserve police officer with Oak Ridge. Time at Oak Ridge. Newport Police Department. City Police Department, and then. Here, Janet. He has his basic advanced 1,000 hours of training, armor, firearms instructor, and
H.
Pleasure to be here. Very much. Support we have. Not very often. Public servants. Not everybody waves at you with all 5 fingers.
Yeah.
Folks have any questions for me?
Congratulations.
We feel very fortunate to have all of our officers, sergeants, chiefs. This force, I brag about you all the time because I think you're all wonderful and I think I can speak for the.
You probably won't be aware of this, but last summer, shortly after joining the council, I saw you pull somebody over. I saw you pull somebody over and I decided just to sit and watch, see what unfolded. And this woman was not very pleased, to say the least. She was really quite irritated with herself and with you. But you were unflappable and impeccable. So good job for you. Very well deserved promotion. You're the type of guy I trust with a gun. And that's really saying something.
There you go.
Counselor Lehman.
So how is your duties gonna change with your promotion?
Basically, I'll be the legwork of, my job will be essentially doing everything I already have been doing, but supervising as well. Which my supervision here with obviously limited resources and limited officers isn't that big of a deal. We don't have a disciplinary problem here or anything like that. Basically, that would transfer into training. Put up on anybody's training records, make sure everybody has everything that they need. As the chief said, I'm a firearms instructor. I'm on the crisis negotiating team with the county. So that's just in addition to anything the chief has, any kind of statistics. I generally prepare statistics for the your and anything that you folks come up with that you need legwork or looked into, don't hesitate at all to give me a holler because that's what I'm here.
Thank you. Welcome. Again, I saw you interact with the 8th graders from the charter school this year, and you were fantastic with them. Enthralled. And I learned a great deal listening to you.
Mayor, if I could add maybe some other context to a sergeant in a small a police force, because we had this conversation when it became open, when Officer Lee left our department, is do we need one? Why a sergeant when we're a small organization? I think one of the really important things is there is a high number of hours in our coverage period, our 24/7, where one or the other is only available. So, having officers without someone with a supervisory kind of a command experience, certification, and a role could occur much more easily in a small force than in a larger force. So, it does maybe sounds to an outsider a little weird to have, chief, sergeant, 2 patrols. It's pretty vertical. But because of our span in how we operate our coverages, it is pretty essential, and stoked that Dan is filling that role for us. So just added context for him.
Thank you. I think that gives us some redundancy. So good job, guys. I think I missed one thing on the consent agenda too, in terms of the park and tree annual appointments. So with the approval and consent, with the approval of the council, I will reappoint our current committee members. It is by their charter, by their rules, they have to be appointed every year. So our current team is Tom Beatty, Karen Curry, Colleen Marshall, Lana Meston, Joe Morneau. I can never quite get that right. My apologies, Joe. And Mary Mosier and Michelle Shattuck. and I appoint them to serve as the voting members of the Park and Tree Committee for the 2025 calendar.
Mayor Bell.
Yes.
I don't know if this is the right time, but just a housekeeping issue that might be helpful in the future for the
Okay.
appointment
Thank
is
you,
their
Counselor
terms are up the end of December. And they vote on leadership at their January meeting because of their bylaws. So maybe
So we need to
the
move that
appointments
up.
could be in January so that we've appointed before they elect their
Okay.
officers.
All right, well, we'll
Just a
add that to the
housekeeping.
note. Thank you. I appreciate that. They do work really hard and Tom Beatty particularly has been a wonderful influence. Comes with a great deal of knowledge. Not that everybody else on that committee does not, because there are several master gardeners on that committee and they put in a lot of hours and weeding and planning and moving things along in here. Did miss that and I wanted to go back and make sure that y'all knew that. Don't think we have to vote on that. It was just letting y'all know. Okay, now we get into the fun stuff, the ordinances and resolutions. We'll have the second reading of the Hunter Communications contract. And that is an ordinance that's number A234A, an ordinance granting to Hunter Communications, Inc. a non-exclusive franchise and right to construct, operate, and maintain a fiber-based service facility and to occupy city rights of way and to provide fiber-based services in the city of Coburg, Oregon, and repealing A-234. Does this need to be a public meeting?
Oh, public hearing, yes.
Hearing, yeah, public meeting, no. It is a public meeting. It does not have to be a public hearing on the second reading.
Correct.
So we can go ahead and discuss that if need be. We held the first reading last meeting, March 11th. So is there anything that staff would like to add to that?
No, just to recap, just that this is second reading and franchises are all done by ordinance and first reading was, as the mayor mentioned, last month. So this is second reading and no changes to the ordinance language or the agreement language were made between first and second reading. So there's nothing else to explicitly state and call out for the motion and yeah, available to answer any questions. This is somewhat routine. Period of we have 7, I think, total franchises, and we're marching through the list. We'll be bringing another franchise here in a few months for one of our other utilities.
Are there any questions or comments from council? Not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number I think it's 34A
It is.
and read it a second time.
That's the ordinance granting to Hunter Communications, Inc., the non-exclusive franchise, as I previously read it.
Second.
Layman, a second. Is there any debate? Any conversation that we need to include in here? If not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. The motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Now we'll move on to resolution 2025-03, a resolution adopting the council rules of governance. Next, we'll have a staff report from Mr. Hanks on this resolution, and I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you. This council rules of governance is a document that the city charter actually references and states that the council
If
shall
I might add,
have.
This begins on page 48 in your packets.
Thank you.
You're looking for it.
Yeah, there's a short staff report preceding it. And then I've got in the bottom of my 45 on my print
45
is where the
you are
rules,
correct.
where the actual rules document starts. We've put the document in front of you several times prior as we've worked it through, because really what it is it's guidance for how you all, with some obvious regulatory requirements for certain components, but it really sets the table for how the council operates. So there's we wanted to make sure there was a heavy dose of council involvement and review of the document. As I mentioned, it's referenced in the charter that the council shall have a document like this. Some of the challenges, and before I go any further on the challenges, Sammy Egbert, City Recorder, did the heavy lifting on this document. I think it's a great document. What we were challenged with is what you can keep going. You can keep going and going and going and have tons and tons of stuff in a council rules document. And as we started looking at it and comparing, okay, we have a lot of these required shalls in there and a lot of shoulds, or it would be good, or added kind of just guidance language started creeping in. And I was guilty of some of that. Well, we should add this and add that. So we pared it back down and said, okay, it's getting convoluted and complicated. What we want and what this really the charter is calling for, and what you want to adopt really via ordinance is the shalls, is how you shall function. Kind of the framework by how you do your work. So it culled back out, got a little skinnier again on the document. We've incorporated a couple individual comments that we received at the council retreat and at the last packet that we included them in. So what we feel really comfortable and good about is that we've put forward what we think is a really good working document that you all have had a chance to look at prior. But there, clearly, if you see anything that you have questions about procedurally about how and why that works that way, or if the words are confusing and how we've put that forward, now's the time. But it's also not etched in stone. This is a resolution. So, if there are major things, we probably want to keep it to a, yearly tidying up rather than touching it too many times. But if there's something significant we want to get on, we should get on it now. And then we'll be keeping track of, little items that, especially as things move forward and we use parts of this, maybe there's need and desire for clarification, but I think it's a really good starting document for council to utilize.
If I might throw in here, I did notice as I was looking at the packet earlier, on page 53, under 3.4 voting, number 5, it is the council will appoint or remove the city administrator and or city recorder. That was just not, it was left off there. So I wanted to add that.
Great.
Now, Councillor Lehman.
So I had sent Adam email with some of the questions I had. Where is the area, the adjournments section in here?
I missed that. Which section?
Adjournment.
Adjournment, sorry.
I think it says 8:30 unless.
No, just the whole section about adjournment. The question about the sidebar conversations.
Excuse me. So there's no adjournment section in this version.
Okay, so that's deleted completely then?
It is. The only part where it mentions the adjournment is listed out on the agenda.
Okay, all right. So what the issues were that we talked about that was having sidebar conversations occurring after the meeting is adjourned.
I remember.
And just wanted to clarify that counselors can have sidebar conversations individually in the meeting, after the meeting, at the coffee shop if they wish to. You just can't have serial conversations where I talk with you about an issue, you in turn talk to you about the issue. talk to me
Right.
about- And that would be something that would be an ethics violation.
Yeah, because then it
Serial
becomes a
meeting.
public meeting.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then similar to that, in-person conversations would be like email conversations as well.
right.
So that was kind of addressed in the first version, but now it's completely out of this version. Okay.
And Counselor, real quick, that's one of those shall and should kind of situations where that language really was, it started creeping into kind of a preferred mode of operation rather than what shall and legally occur. And you've accurately explained.
So we really don't want to be having conversations about the meeting agenda or anything like that before the meeting starts while we're sitting here. Especially after the meeting, while our microphones might still be on too. So that wouldn't be appropriate to do. So that was one of our conversations. The other was under the communication with staff. So that's 10.1. So the second paragraph there, materials supplied to a counselor member regarding pertinent, urgent, or critical issues that would be of interest to other counselors will be made available to all council members so that they have equal access. So I like that, but the other question is, what about comments, emails, or whatever that are sent by counselors to mayors, to other council members, to city administrator, or to staff members? Should those be equally treated the same in terms that the rest of the council will have access to that? Personal emails
I
or
think
emails?
it depends on the content.
Well, if a counselor is raising issues about agenda items
Then
and it goes to the city administrator, is it equal that materials that are supplied from you to us individually are shared equally? Does it happen the other way, reciprocal? We send you an email about agenda items with a lot of content.
Adam, can I cut?
Sure.
Yeah. So why would you not email the council as a whole when you include it, if you wanted it on the record to that? So you'd send it to the city administrator and the council. The way that the city would respond if they received an email like that, Adam, would to be put it back on the record, to do a memo, a staff report. These concerns came in to the counselor, but the city's not going to be sending, this one needs to go to this counselor and this counselor.
That's fine, as long as we get clarity on, because in the past, there have been emails sent to the city administrator that were in the packets. So just want to know when that happens and when it doesn't happen,
Emails that were sent to the city administrator.
or the mayor.
So can you give me an example? If anything comes to the city through the front counter or by email, it would become, and it says to the council, it would go on record in a city.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if a counselor wants to have a message sent to all counselors, then you send it to the city administrators asking that it be also addressed to the city council.
I think it would be helpful to say that in the past, I have emailed Adam because I wanted to talk to him about a specific issue that I cared about. I think that's okay, even though it wasn't on the agenda. It was in regards to accessibility. I emailed him, we had a conversation, and that was purely just to set up a meeting. And I think for something like that, it doesn't need to be BCC'd to everybody or CCC'd to everybody, because it's just an individual request for a meeting on a given issue. Now, if we have an email conversation with each other, absolutely it needs to be sent to the group. So I hope that clears it up.
Depends on the context. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, you please, go ahead.
So I've had, prior places have a lot of experience with this sticky topic. It is a tough one. There's a lot of discretion. There's a lot of decision-making about what that threshold is on individual, when it goes to all counselors, when it is in confidence. The goal, I think, is to encourage and not discourage communication between council and staff. And it's two-way street, education and sharing, not withholding of important decision-making related information. The, educational kind of individual educational background about, let's talk about, Senate Bill 100, land use planning in Oregon, that probably, doesn't rise unless there's something pending in front of council at some point, you'd share it with everybody. So I think the answer, and that's why it's kind of more removed here, is there's a ton of discretion. And it's about impossible to legislate in or write in where those lines are. I think the intent, I hope, the intent is, well, what I've seen that's troublesome is being mandated, and this happened for a short period, being mandated, having a rule that the city manager would, if a city councilor sent something in, the answer to that city councilor would be shared with everyone. That is fine to a point, but it can discourage counselors from inquiring and asking, because, well, if that's going to get to everybody, there's, when it gets nasty is when there's strategy going on, right? And so it's hard to figure out how much you want to put in here to squash strategy, maybe for good reason, but you're also squashing productive communication between staff and council. So I don't have a good answer for that other than to omit it. And hopefully, if somebody feels that something is procedurally whacked in our communications, that we talk about it and make sure that, I guess that does make sense, that it should or shouldn't have gone to everyone. I'm open for the discussion, because that is for sure something that many councils and staff, I think, struggle with different examples of it innocent, different examples of it not being innocent by being, borderline devious, I guess, or a certain strategy. But my take is there's a pretty good, I don't think it's too hard to have a threshold about, this is worth sharing with the group. I've given some content that is, that would, and I want, my job is to make sure that all of you have the same information. So it really is probably equally a conversation for, our contract for me, for making sure that, I'm doing what you all want me to do, maybe more so than it being in a council rules document. I'm not sure if that helps the context, but.
Yeah, thank you. I also think we have to remember too that if all the counselors are on an email, that is now public record. And in some cases, I think counselors would want to have a sidebar conversation with the staff without it going on the public record. We're just trying to get information, asking questions, kick around some ideas, that kind of thing. It's not always appropriate for that, everything that I talk to staff about to be to have to go on the public record. So I think that's the other thing to consider as well.
And Counselor Smith. Also, I guess I feel I'm not comfortable with everything being shared with everybody, not because it might be offensive, but you're really close to violating that ethics rule of what if a decision happens because of this and it wasn't done the right way. But I think that for the most part, if there's a concern about something that council has to make a decision on, I trust that staff would work with the mayor to then put that question forward for more discussion on the agenda, so that it's a part of the public meeting and then everybody hears it. It seems like that's a practical way to address concerns or decisions coming up, as opposed to getting emails going with everybody. I'm not comfortable with somebody replying all and then we're in trouble.
But can I pose maybe a question, and maybe to Councilor Lehman, if you have an example? I'm not sure if I'm heading it in the right direction. Is it one that it came in a packet or went to everyone and your question or concern is that it maybe didn't need to or shouldn't have, or is it the other way
I
around?
have three different decisions that
Okay.
I heard you make. One is that if a counselor has a communications to you, let's say, about an agenda or an upcoming decision or questions, and it's pretty lengthy and may not want to take all the time at the meeting to address it, but it's sent to you with the request that this be included in the packet. If it's not in addressed that way, then it's to your discretion if you choose to do that, unless I specifically say, I do not wish this to be shared with the staff. I thought I heard you say is that if you don't want to have it shared, make that clear to you. And then I think you still have the discretion if you feel it should be shared for some ethical reason. But to your point, if you're wishing it not to be, you should address that in the email with you as well. So as I hear what you're saying is that if we wish to have it shared at the council, include that in the email to you. Please include this in the packet under the section where we're discussing this. Otherwise, you can either say don't share it, or it's implied that you shouldn't share it unless you request it to be.
Yeah, I think to Sammy's point is if there's something that you are assuming or wanting to be shared with council, it should probably just be sent to council. So you don't have me as any sort of accidental gatekeeper or filter. And that is perfectly acceptable to have something submitted to myself or to the city recorder to say, for this upcoming thing, I would like this written,
On the record.
written comment on the record.
In
That's
some cases, it's more than that. It's questions
right.
to you as well.
Right. This comes up in the budget committee process kind of frequently. And the last budget round, since we're assembling the finishing touches on the budget right now, between first meeting and second meeting of the budget committee, there were questions that arose. And so then instead of some of them happened in the meeting, some of them happened, I think, immediately after or around. And so I incorporated that into a Q&A and it was in the second meeting's packet. That's another, way. And other ways that it's included in packet material is, of an idea or a suggestion. It can be, if you read the staff reports, some will say, council provided input and then fill in the blanks. Those aren't necessarily only referencing council input from a meeting. If I feel that that's useful and helpful context that, that council has discussed this particular thing or has mentioned this thing, it can be an offline things. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get it in there. I think that the core part to me is what's everybody's expectations, and are we fulfilling that by kind of our highest and best effort at collaborative communication and making sure that when they relate to decision-making or context background, excuse me, that helped shape a decision, that it's shared in some form or another, council has it available to them. And it probably takes a lot of different forms of how it comes through. But for your usefulness, for it to be explicit, the easiest standard current way, regardless of what the council rules say, is send something to the city recorder, myself, and copy the rest of council, so it's sure that it's in there. Now that needs to be a one-way street. You don't want council replying on things, so you have to be careful, and it has to matter enough to have that level of formality. But I do, when you're talking about the questions in the background, I enjoy a lot of back and forth, a lot of dialogue to help me shape how I bring things forward to you all. And so if that was stifled by some significant rules that kind of make people think, if it's going to be shared, I'm not going to, I'm not going to ask Adam that, or I'm not going to check in. I think that does us as a group a disservice. So whatever we land on, it would be, it probably still takes a degree of kind of best intentions and trust a little bit that it's shared appropriately. And there's a lot of years and years of kind of working those, molding them into ways that make sense. Because there's background that, you know, from a, I mean, there's sessions in city manager conferences about this. You know, so this is not this is a job thing about how you artfully do that and how you artfully sidestep. You know, if it's going to cause problems and look bad to a certain or perceived to look bad by from a certain counselor, so the dynamics are upset by that, because the goal here is neutral, providing full information so the body can make its decision. So,
And of course, y'all do know that the city administrator, the city recorder, and the mayor meet once a week, and we set the council agenda based on your input, based on, you know, what the upcoming standard items are, but certainly based on the input that we have received, all of us.
Just two more points. I think that added a lot of clarity in terms of the communications that go from council to you or to the mayor. The second paragraph here, though, is speaking about materials supplied to a councilor member, say from you. Under materials, would that be like an email as well? So if you sent an email to a councilor member as a result of a phone conversation, a follow-up email about a urgent or critical pertinent issue, then that would be shared with each staff member or each council member. It says here that will be made available. I would say will be provided.
Example I can think of is League of Oregon Cities had the revenue guidebook that they put out. And I think I shared it with the revenue subcommittee, and I think I offered it up to council later, probably, I don't know, a week later maybe. But before the next council meeting, you know, for context, again, when it was starting to come from the subcommittee to council level conversation, wanted to give that reference material as context. So I think that would be an example maybe of that.
This isn't real black and white.
Right.
And I know that that may be a bit uncomfortable for all of us, but it is content driven, and it is not necessarily really black and white.
Yeah, other vehicles of doing some of the same thing is the city administration report. That's another vehicle for some of that communication that doesn't rise to full agenda, formal decision-making. Heads up, there's actually a couple in here tonight for us to get to that are kind of that way. You know, I think different topics, and as the mayor said, different content have different channels. And kind of my job, and then I will check in with the mayor if I'm not sure. I'll say, you know, this one, you know, I think, you know, where does this sit? We will collectively, and Sammy kind of hit these, and where's the best procedurally, where's the best place to send this particular nugget of information or response. And sometimes, you know, I haven't been as regular as I was. I probably need to get on to this kind of a, you know, Friday emails. I was sending some of those. I probably have been lax on summarizing kind of what's going on. You know, it's really less formal, heads up, early indicator kind of stuff. I really like, and we've talked about it in other meetings, sharing, you know, so by the time we get to a formal business meeting on any topic, you've heard about it once, twice, 3 times in some like little tidbit form, maybe a little more meat on the bones, and then kind of the formal thing when we get to this kind of a meeting. So, yeah, I'm wide open to continuing this conversation because like I said, it is a dicey one, potentially dicey, and it is a common one between a governing body and kind of the staff. You know,
And the last one of the two things.
Okay.
So we deleted quite a bit of language that was in there about staff or counselors requesting staff time, 15 minutes or more staff time. The original language seemed to say mostly that if I wanted to talk to the public works director and it was going to be 14 minutes or 16 minutes, regardless, I still needed to let you know first. And that's changed now, which I appreciate. Because now it says questions of city staff and or request for additional information that may take staff time in excess of 15 minutes should be directed only to the city manager. So that's still there.
Yeah, so this one was also, this is kind of somewhat of a difference between form of government, city administrator versus city manager. And we kind of operate in our charters kind of a bit of a hybrid. The city administrator form that I operated in prior, they had a charter change to go to city manager at the very end of my time. It created issues when the governing body individually went to department heads and the city administrator wasn't made aware of what was going on. Again, kind of the strategy, game playing, end arounds, those kinds of things. The gatekeeper language here, I know can kind of read and feel like this stifling thing where it has to go through Adam. You can't talk to anybody else. And I think that's a structure here, but I think in day to day, obviously we can see where the edges are, where that creeps up, because clearly from a practical standpoint and a just logistics and time standpoint, there's going to be things I love it if you say, yeah, I've got these questions, and I'd say, great, talk to Brian, give Brian a call, give Larry a call, where it really is operational. But I still, for me to do my job effectively, keeping tabs on what those questions and issues are helps me a ton.
But just so
Hopefully helps me help you.
just so to be clear, we should have it read the way we want it to be, because the way it says is if it's less than 15 minutes, it doesn't have to go through you.
Right.
That's the way it's read.
Right. And I think that the time to me really conveys, how in-depth it is, right? 15 is hey, I saw the street sweeper out and they missed a street or
If we're only going to do a 10-minute call, we don't have to call you first. If we want to talk to the public, that's the way it's written. So is that the way we want it or not?
If you can hold it to 10
Yeah.
minutes, I think that
I
that's.
do, and
I just want to know, am I in compliance
Is
if I'm
it
calling?
a yes or no question? Is it a passing information?
If it's less than 15 minutes, we can
Yeah.
call
I
Public Works
think
first.
that is
Okay.
probably correct. If you're sending an email, you need to include the person you're sending the email to and the city administrator, so that they are both
Yeah,
aware.
okay.
And really that's another version, just a different turn of the three-legged stool, of trusting. It's just another trust that I'm trusting that, that everybody's going to loop me in if it matters. Right. And that's, and I don't want to automatically take up everybody's time for me to always have to determine, does it matter for me to be involved or not? I think that's the other trust that I have trust in staff. And I have trust in you all that, that's good information. They're experts in their field. Those are usually helpful to the almost always helpful to the process. If we see where there's abuse, and that's where with Councilor Bowman before the meeting started, the question of council rules plus council norms. A lot of these rules, and especially these council rules books, get bigger when they're addressing a specific corrective behavior of a prior situation. I don't know that we have any. I think that's why ours is pretty efficient and pretty straightforward. But we can always revisit it if there's particular communication kind of triangulation that's going askew. But I haven't experienced it here in any shape or form with in any direction of that triangle. So
I do have a point of order. I'm wondering if we need to ask for a motion and then continue our debate, or?
I think I was taking the word still in the Q&A section, but
Okay.
you would
All
deliberate
right.
after a motion, then you deliberate on
All right.
whether or not the merits of that motion. But we're in,
Continue on.
yeah.
Well,
Counselor Bowman.
I had a question on entirely something different, and it's probably me just making sure I read it correctly. Under the section about attendance, absences, excused, unexcused, it says words to the effect of the counselor shall inform the mayor, the city administrator, the city recorder. Is that the mayor, comma, the city administrator and the city recorder, or do we just pick one that comes up first in the contact list?
All was the intention of that, just for redundancy. We all have slightly different reasons why we would like to know.
Right.
But the core reason is, for quorum and, ensuring that the body can function. That's the core reason.
Right, absolutely.
Yep.
I just was wondering, is it Mary, comma, or as in mayor and or mayor or? I was wondering, is it an and or an or? Basically, sounds like it's an and.
Yeah, I think the intention was an and.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. It just wasn't in there. I just wanted to make certain that it was.
Good. We can correct that one as a Scrivener's. Yeah. Just to clarify.
So just so I know what I'm correcting, it says counselors should inform the mayor, city administrator, and city recorder if unable to attend a council meeting, period.
Yeah, and
That's exactly what it says. It says mayor, comma, city administrator, comma, and city recorder.
I must have not seen,
51, Adam.
the way my computer read it
Oh.
together.
I see. I gotcha.
We have to notify all three.
Yes,
Because our practice is we just respond to Sammy and say, we're not gonna be there. Did you have a electronic
The quorum.
request? Yeah. So we're just letting you know. It says we're supposed to let all three know.
So how do you want it? How can you, do you
I think
want
we just
to,
let the city,
how do you want to live with this?
city recorder know. And then she lets the other people know.
I would also agree with that, just for convenience sake.
Our
I kind of
convenience.
feel like whatever works for staff. Because it's on them whether or not to call the meeting or cancel it. So, if you're okay with us just responding to Sammy, I'm fine with that. Or maybe that form automatically goes to all mayor, the city manager and you. And when we reply, you all get it. I don't know. I don't care as long as it works for you guys.
We can handle it any way you want to do it.
Let our language be the way it's supposed to.
If I'm hearing correctly, the preference would be to notify the city recorder of the absence, and the city recorder would then notify the city administrator and the mayor.
Yes.
As appropriate.
If that's your preference, that's easy for us to accommodate and
That
accomplish.
Indeed, the preference of the council,
Mhm.
and nods are okay at
Yes.
this point. Yes. Okay. Tammy, did you get that?
I got
Okay.
the amendment, yes.
All right. Thank you. What else?
I move to approve resolution
We're moving on.
5-3, a resolution adopting 2025 city rules, council rules of government as amended.
Second,
All right, we have a motion by Counselor Lehman. We have a second by Counselor Bowman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously 6-0. Thank you. That was great discussion, and I think we've clarified a few things and we can move on. I was impressed that it ended up just at 12 pages. So, good job. Okay, our next resolution is resolution 20-25-06. No, I put the dash in the wrong place. Apologize there. A resolution authorizing the city to seek state transportation funds through the 2025 Small City Allotment Grant Program. And Mr. Hanks will give a staff report on that.
Thank you. Yeah. ODOT annually has this program for local street projects, capital funding for street projects for cities of less than 5,000 population. It's been used successfully here in Coburg several times. Most recently, we're finishing North Willamette, East Macy, and North Harrison. We're still in the reimbursement documentation submittal stage, right, with about a week or two to go. We should be finishing that one up. And the item in front of you here is a request for council approval to apply for the next round, which is due at the end of this month, for another local street. And I'd add that the maximum allotment is 250,000. It is competitively awarded, so there's no guarantees at all. We have come up with staff, Brian and Megan and I kind of looked through the grant criteria and looked at our pavement management system and our rankings of our streets, and also looking at what is close to, from a design standpoint, shovel ready, ability to submit. So what I put forward in this resolution, and this is just application before I start talking about the 3 streets, this is a approval for application. If we, obviously if we don't get it, no harm, no foul. If we get it, that comes back to council for approval. And this one is one of those few that does not have a match. So, you know, when we bring it back, it should be a yay to accept the grant. You know, the ones that are questionable are, oh man, it comes with all these strings attached. Do we really want to take that grant fund and have to, you know, have this match or do this, have these other commitments? It's a pretty straightforward process once if we score well enough to be awarded. This resolution a little bit differently. We are still trying to figure out, you know, really what's the best streets to apply for with a tight timeline. And I think, you know, a couple things. Our closest kind of from a engineering design is the Harrison Street right behind Pavilion Park. That has some paving, local street paving needs. And we were also looking at streets differently than the North Willamette project, where the 250,000 was a component of a much larger project. The objective, at least from staff's proposal to council, is that we're looking for a grant that really hits the 250,000 mark only. Stop. And we don't utilize local street dollars. So it's a fairly, when you do them that way, it's a fairly small street segment, really, because 250,000, you have to subtract engineering, design, permitting, all of that from it. It's about a $200,000 to $210,000 bid project there, plus or minus. And then we don't know really, you know, how bids go. And when we're doing a street reconstruction, we also have storm drainage requirements. So that consumes, aside from consuming land, like we talked about last meeting, it also consumes some of the dollars that would otherwise be for asphalt. What is not eligible for these is utility movements that might need or want to be made in association. Those are not eligible expenses. So if we encounter projects that have a lot of that, we have to factor that in as dollars of our own. So the goal here is to seek your approval to select one of the 3 that are listed in the resolution and in the staff report. The project I mentioned, North Harrison, which we think is a really solid project, is furthest along in our engineering design, finishes out some of the Pavilion Park improvements, really ties that all together and accomplishes, I think, scores well from the pavement side also. The other 2 are sections of Skinner, which we don't have design work done, but we, checking in with Branch, we feel confident we can get pre-design, which is all that's required for the application. It doesn't require full engineered set of plans for the application. We feel we could accomplish that before the deadline. Each of those segments have probably more degradation in the pavement than Harrison. Harrison is beat up. It's got a sewer line across it. It's got the new parking bay that is will be unpaved because of our park project cost issues. So it's kind of a bit of a 50-50. From the staff side, timing, we were originally leaning to Harrison, and then, thinking about really the pavement, and also kind of locationally, from local, truly local street, what's the utilization rates? We don't have great current trip counts, but trying to balance all those things out. And the goal here would be, get your input. If there is a particular one you want to amend the resolution and say, we think this one, is the one you should apply for, we will gladly do that. Otherwise, if you're comfortable to let us finish off our work with Branch and apply for one of those three that we feel best has the best shot of getting the 250, as well as kind of hitting the mark from the best bang for the buck from a street system improvements for the community members.
Can I ask Mr. Harmon a question?
Yeah, come on up, Brad.
Oh, I have spatial difficulty and I certainly know the Harrison to that section. But on the Skinner section, which street is in worse repair? I mean, I always think it's Skinner, but
Yeah, North Skinner from Pearl probably to Locust or even to East Van Dyne is in pretty poor shape.
Just to add on to that, the goal here also is, as we've talked about with the Collector Street issue, the further north stretch of Skinner still has some complications with the TSP and its designation as a collector, which this is for a local street. So I don't think there's any problem because it's 250,000. We wouldn't reach there anyway. But the further you go, we're sort of deferring street improvements at that far northern end until we resolve how we want that street designation to go, which then dictates what the street improvements need to be, the standards.
Yeah, so what's in the staff report would be from Mill Street to Pearl on North Skinner, and then the other section would be Pearl Street to Delaney. I think that's what we listed out.
I think we got
McKenzie, sorry.
Pearl to
Yeah.
Mackenzie and Pearl to Delaney.
So it's going north or south from Pearl,
Right.
or
A block.
block or two if we
Each,
squeeze
yeah,
it.
if we
Right.
can- if we
As
can.
far as the 250
Right.
goes, is really what we're looking at. And that's part of the thing that we're working out with Branch is there may be one segment that is really more conducive to hitting that mark exactly and has a nice natural stopping point compared to the other one. And then we'll try and resolve the other one with a different funding source at a different time.
Counselor Smith? I had a question. It's not one listed here, and I'm not saying it should be, but where you turn off of North Willamette at the pizza parlor, and then you go Dixon down to Maple I don't know if you've looked at it. And
Yeah.
what shape it is in comparative to the others, but it's just about undrivable.
Yeah, so Dixon Street is on the it is a collector, and we deemed that to be phase 2 of the Collector Street project. So there's 3 phases. Phase 1 was going to be North Coleman, from Pearl to Mill, and then from Mill to Skinner. Phase 2, the reason why we kind of labeled that the phase 2 is because there is a current water project being engineered to replace that 12-inch AC water line that runs up Dixon Street. Because funding was shorted on the water loan side for obvious reasons, that's just a shovel-ready project. So what we're hoping to do is, always in conjunction, try and do those AC line replacements and then rebuild the street over the top of it.
So is that that, the section I'm talking about, because I've lived here so long, I don't know what street it is. I just know. who
You're
lives on
talking
it.
about South Skinner to Maple is what
I'm
you're talking about.
About in front of Mayor Pudwell's
Yeah,
house.
Jerry
and
Benny.
Behind Mosier's.
Yes.
By Mackey's, that
Yes.
one little straight section
Yep.
there.
So
Okay.
that South Skinner and where it turns, it makes the corner, it turns to Maple. There's just a little section of Maple right there by
And
the
they
corner.
did water on
On
Coleman,
Coleman,
but not,
Yep.
yeah.
that's
So
correct.
is that being held up because of water project,
Well,
that little section? Because it's,
yes, and I think we could probably sit here until 2 o'clock in the morning going over, what streets we should
right,
do.
and that was why I asked, it's
Yeah.
not that I want it done, it's that in comparison to the others, would that be one that would be an option?
Yeah,
Because
so
it's-
what we try and do with these projects is try and line them up with, it's like putting a puzzle together, right? So, if we can rebuild one section with one pot of money, then right off of that, we can rebuild another section with a different pot of money. And we just try and keep building those out and then trying to find funds to do the others, right?
Right.
It's not a perfect system. And we try and do the best we can on which streets get, selected to get paved, rebuilt, or, just an overlay or something like that. Our street inventory, it separates it out in great detail what treatment would be required as of today, right? Every 5 years that treatment may change, right? If we don't get to something where it's preventative, like the crack sealing, the seal coating, well, 5 years from now, that could end up being a full reconstructed project and not just an overlay of what we've just, prevented, if that makes
And
any
no
sense.
complaint as far as the street, just wondered if it was on the radar at our.
Oh, all of those streets are on the radar. It's just, what we try and do is we try and pick the very best one that would match for this funding, the SCA grant. I'm not quite sure we could, well, one, there's some utilities in there. Two, I'm not sure we could get, $200,000 worth of, paving done on that section.
Okay.
Wouldn't be enough, probably.
Right. We try and do, I know it's counterintuitive or backwards to think about this, but the worst streets don't always get
Right.
the treatment, right? We try and be selective in what treatments go where because, they're assets. Every street is an asset. So, if we can redo one street to buy us 25 years, we know that the other street may need to be rebuilt. Well, it's going to need to be rebuilt 10 years from now, if that makes sense. So we just try and keep those assets as nice as we can for as long as we can. So the treatment cost comes down as we do those treatments. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does.
Life cycle costing and how we apply the capital and then the overlay of our other utilities, that all factors in.
Counselor Wells.
Well, I thought you might have answered this, but we're not voting tonight, or this motion is not specific to a certain street that we're going to improve. So
Yes.
it's all good conversation, but
No,
we're just saying,
no,
let
it-
them have the discretion of what they end up putting the money into.
it's two, of these three. So this funding, the request is council approval tonight of this resolution that gives us discretion to apply for
Only
one
amongst
of
those
these,
three.
one of these three streets.
We do need to decide
Yes.
tonight.
Yep,
which
we have
of those
We have an
three.
SCA grant deadline. If we choose to do none,
I think that's quite right. Not to interrupt, but we don't have to decide which of the three. It's just amongst those three, right? We have to be specific as to which one we're going to
No.
choose. Put the money.
no.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
thought-
I misunderstood. Thank you for that clarification.
This would limit it to those three, and then we would finish out our engineering processes and determine out of those three, which is the kind of really our criteria is, which is the highest likelihood to score well enough to get the funds. And then and in parallel with that, which gets the most asphalt on the ground without going over into our local dollar funding. So really matching up the street lengths and the need for paving with the 210-ish, $215,000 that we would see from the project.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to point out, on your option number 2 there, Skinner Street, like North Skinner, from Pearl to Mackenzie. If I remember right, when I walked down that section, the section between Mackenzie and Mill is actually, if I'm not mistaken, the worst part of that street. If I avoid driving over it because it feels as though you're off-road, you're going off-road. There's potholes. And I didn't know if that was, so number 2 right now would exclude that part. And I don't know if that was on purpose or, if we.
I'll start and then see if we're on the same page. Yeah.
I know we talked about this a little, Adam,
Yeah,
but I just want to, maybe we didn't get to this fine point, so I would just hope, yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, they all have challenges. They all have different issues with them. And the idea really with the other section is hitting it from the other side with the Coleman Collector Street project, because it gets there. We already have in that design turning the corner to some degree. And if we can couple that with additional funds, we can keep moving that one from the north to the south. These were moving from Pearl in either direction, then they would meet. So we, inevitably, to do all the local streets that are in bad shape, this grant is a drop in the bucket. It's not, we need to put another zero, at least one. 2 zeros would solve it.
Yeah.
One zero would not, would do a lot of good. And this still gets us, it chunks us away. But really, this kind of reminds me of the CIP conversation we had, not as much this year, but last year, where we put the entirety of the, including 2030 and beyond. That list is a big list of streets. And so we're trying to take that top quadrant of that list, and we may juggle them around a little bit based on the likelihood of funding, but generally taking the stuff that is in that top tier of what's already been approved on the CIP. But different roads have different, they can fail, in between then, as well. Certain rain events and different things can really change the degradation patterns of streets. Did I
On
get
the
it?
same page.
All
Yep. Yep.
Well, and I think we all recognize that the streets on the east side of the city are the oldest and in most cases in worst repair. In many cases, not in most. Those streets are, as you say, little black driving off-road or walking or rolling off-road.
One other tidbit, not to beat this to death, but we also look at the design of how many driveway access points versus, what's already available for storm drainage. There are some of the sections of Skinner that really are conducive right now to not having driveway or parking. So we can get further with asphalt. It's a narrower street, less parking bays. We had a lot more parking bays on this project here than we envisioned for either direction on Skinner, but especially going north from Pearl. And it does have a little more ready-made for some of the storm drain improvements that we would need to put in with it. So those are some of the other things when we're walking it. We're looking at utility conflicts, we're looking at driveways and other utilization. Those all add to cost and also, impact property owners. There's some parts of Skinner that are seemingly, at least optimistically, fairly conducive to to a retrofit with less impact.
What we're voting on tonight is whether we should go ahead and allow you to apply for the grant utilizing one of these 3 streets. If we are awarded the grant, then you would bring that back to us and we would make, with your information, make a final approval on which street we would use. correct?
Well, we will only submit for one.
Okay,
Yeah, so you're kind of, you're saying submit for the best one you think of these three when we finish everything.
based
And
on
we,
engineering.
right,
But-
with all the things that we've kind of been describing and that what we're shooting for, kind of the attributes that we're shooting for, which are scoring well in the criteria, not, the project area not exceeding a size that would cause us to have local street fund participation in the cost. Those are probably the two drivers that we're really shooting for. And, also that, I think they all go together is it gets hopefully 2 blocks instead of 1. That's what we're looking at. What's the maximum benefit that we can expand the same dollars to accomplish? But ODOT we will submit one. They will only award based on one submittal. And then we'll come back and say what street we were awarded and then have a contract. It's 250,000. So those come to council regardless.
So is this a competitive word, or is it,
It is, yes.
the likelihood of getting it is low, medium, high?
Well, it depends on who all's applying. Some people apply, some communities might apply once every 10 years, some apply every year. Coburg is, has received it several years, not every year, but several. There is a bonus scoring for cities that apply the prior cycle and didn't get it. If they apply the very next year, they get a little kicker. They get a bonus aside from the regular scoring. Basically, trying to spread the wealth of this program out to cities if they try a second time around, that they're a little higher propensity to be awarded.
Received this before?
Several times. Yeah. The just last year, we're finishing that here. And then, if I'm correct, McKinsey. Yeah. McKinsey, from North Willamette to Harrison in that intersection, was a recipient as well, several years prior. So it's a really good program, part of the state, transportation package that just got released. There was debate, leading into that was, would this program survive that? Still isn't done. This cycle, I'm fairly confident will. As proposed, there's a lot to go before it reaches a finish line, but as proposed, it is maintaining this program at generally the level. So it's a very popular program. It really accomplishes a lot for, there's a lot of cities in Oregon under 5,000. Surprisingly, I think it's over half of the cities in Oregon are under 5,000. So they're eligible. Whether they apply, I don't know how many they get annually.
Coleman, did you have a question or comment?
Did somebody else want to go?
Are you ready to make a motion?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I humbly and ever so patiently move to approve resolution 2025-06. Let's see if I can get this. Authorizing the city to utilize state transportation fund through the Small Cities Alignment for the 2025 cycle. I paraphrased the motion of it. I hope that works.
We would authorize the city to seek the transportation funds through the 2025 Small City Allotment Grant Program.
Yes, thank you. I forgot my glasses. So I forgot my glasses.
All right, so we have a motion by Counselor Bowman. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Counselor Smith. Are there any other questions or information needed before we vote? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously 6-0. Thank you. Okay. Contracts, or no, we don't have any contracts tonight. Right, so we're on to council action items, and I see none, so administrative reports.
Yeah, we've got a few items here that are maybe a little out of the norm for the administrative report section. The first item is proposed item in the packet on page 70 titled Proposed Revenue Enhancements. It's a draft of a community outreach document that we wanted to have council get their eyes on before it goes out. This relates to the last council meeting where we discussed the revenue subcommittee's recommendation for new fees for the general fund. So that it was the item that Sammy mentioned was a red folder item. So the council revenue subcommittee under agenda item 8 that was in the red folder gives background on the two fees that we presented to you after the subcommittee went through their process of reviewing all different potential revenue streams in the general fund. We had intended or had hoped maybe optimistically to have actual enacting documents in the packet for you this month to approve those fees. There is a little more to it from a legislative standpoint about whether they need to be, whether any of the ordinances, especially the tree fee, if the ordinance itself needs to be updated, or if they can be done in individual resolutions, or if we bring it, if all of our ordinance stars align and our procedural way to bring it forward is through the annual comprehensive fees process and add those to that resolution rather than adding to any kind of standalone fee resolution. So short of we've enlisted our legal staff at LCOG to help sort out what is what's the best way to go. May would be the month where we have the mechanism in place to actually have council vote on the creation of those two new fees, which is a $5 parks and open space fee and an addition of $2 to the tree fee on utility bills per month.
That would bring it up to a total of $4 on the tree.
Correct. Yeah. So the bottom near the bottom of that form has a table, and I added new monthly fees. So it's and tried to put in the parentheses there for total to give a sense of the impact to utility customers. And then on the second page, just for background reference, included the utility rate adjustment mailer that we sent out that kind of summarizes the true utility parts of the utility bill. And then these are the new service fees for things that are utilizing the utility bill process, but are not truly utility fees. So no particular motion or need other than to give an update kind of legislatively on where we are on moving the creation of those fees forward to council. You'll see that in May. And seeing and reviewing what we are in the meantime wanting to get out so the community is aware that those are being considered.
Counselor Smith?
Just one thing that maybe could use some clarification when it goes to the public, where it says, what will this mean for my bill? With the tree fee, I think we need to delineate the park fee is new, but with the addition of the tree fee, the actual cost on your bill is going to be $48 a year, not 24. It kind of looks, when I look at that, it tells me, oh, I'm going to see a $24 tree fee on my bill, and it's actually going to be 48.
If you look at the graph.
If you look at the graph.
The new is only 2.
The new is only 24, but when it says, what does this mean for your bill? The
How do we say
total amount
Yeah,
is
Yeah,
higher.
because it's double.
Right.
I think I can fix that with the
Just a line between.
to the left. Well, I'll put current, and so current will be 0 for park, 2 for tree. The next column over
Yeah.
will be, yep,
I think
got it.
Just
Yep.
clarification for public.
expand that. Yeah,
That'll make it explicit.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
good input.
One other
Oh,
one that really
Counselor
similar to
Hager.
that, yeah, thank you. On on the column where it talks about the annual revenue, it might help to say something about annual revenue for the city as a whole or something. I don't want somebody reading this in the public and they might get confused and scared by
But why would you even have?
doesn't
that?
apply to them, it's more of a.
Do you need that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Right.
that's. a
Question that's maybe more of a conversation for us rather than it necessary.
Uh-huh.
My intention is, from a scale and impact to say that, it's a fair amount of a new fee on a utility bill. From a city staff perspective and a budget officer perspective, it doesn't generate as much revenue as maybe the community might think $5 would. So that was my intention, but you're right, it might be a little clunky. So I'm open.
We just get
Yeah.
rid of that column
Or
or how?
somehow make it differentiated somehow so people realize that's for the city as a whole, doesn't apply to them personally, like the annual total column is, kind of explaining
Oh,
to the
okay.
ratepayer,
Yeah.
what they're going to be their share, and then this, yeah.
I can visually separate it. I think I get you. Yeah. Yeah.
I think
So
people
you-
like panic.
I can take it off too if you feel that, what I was trying to get across isn't effective.
I think you're
Yeah.
right. It would
Okay.
be nice to show what impact they're having on the city.
Okay.
This will allow give us X amount of dollars to put towards our parks and open space and Y amount of dollars to care for our trees.
This is what it'll cost you. This is what the city will
Right,
benefit.
yeah.
Yeah, and when we go through the budget process, obviously we'll talk a little bit more about, what all that, how all that gets, put together, but
Just a side note, listening to League of Oregon Cities just a week or so ago, or a couple of weeks ago, it all runs together. But last year in 2024, 1/3 of the cities in Oregon were having budget issues, budget shortfalls. This year in 2025, it is 2/3 of all of the cities in Oregon are having budget shortfalls. So when people come to you, because I think it is inevitable that we will all get these questions about, well, is there mismanagement? Where is all this money going? We need to be able to say there is not mismanagement. It is rising costs and flat or decreasing revenue.
The mayor's salary.
It's the mayor's salary. You can tell them that.
How much she paid? Nothing.
Yeah, there's,
But it's going to be doubled soon.
there are, to that point, there are several communities in the state right now that are going through the same hearings process and, a fee creation or increase. Specifically, Southern Oregon just forwarded an article of park and open space fee being created and kind of listing out the other cities in Southern Oregon that already have it. Similarly, in our region, it is, I think we've talked about it before, it is unfortunately one of the few, and as we went through that PowerPoint of the different revenue options, it is one of the few options available in the general fund is either a public safety or a park and open space. So that is one of the two labeled service fees that most cities are putting forward because all cities are capped. There is no city in Oregon that I know of that has any property tax availability for additional pennies that they can actually increase. That, as we talked about, that used to be one of the key roles of a budget committee, was actually setting the tax rate. That's really a non-issue for all budget committee members throughout the state because every city is at its max. But there is no conversation about, increasing, having that big wrestling over adding a couple pennies to the taxable. It's maxed for everybody. So that revenue stream really, how that is estimated in our budget and in most, depending upon how much growth you have going on, it's between 3 and 4.5 is like the largest. If somebody is growing, if a community is growing really gangbusters, they might put 4.5% of growth on that revenue stream annually. And when you have a public, when you have a general fund where, the expenses are very easily rising more than 4.5%. And that property taxes, used to make up the vast majority of the revenue stream in the general fund. Right now, they're about half, and that's common with most cities. About a quarter of its franchise fees, half of its property tax, and the rest is miscellaneous fees for specific programs, municipal court, which are revenues that are cost recovery to some degree with some subsidization, and planning and land use. Those are they both have some revenues, but their costs outweigh their revenues. So public safety and parks are the ones that really have the most dire need for additional revenue to keep up, to avoid significant service level reductions if we don't have that revenue.
So on the back page, this will be changed to the next council meeting for it to be adopted in May. And then when would it be implemented? Or are we approving this tonight then?
No,
Okay,
information only.
Correct.
so it'll be on the May agenda.
The actual utility,
Well,
the fee increase?
This is to be approved by, being adopted by the council, right?
What are you,
Increases.
not sure which
Proposed
one you're
revenue
looking at.
account. On the back page, it says adopted.
That's from the resolution prior. That's from the prior agenda
Oh,
item.
that's for the prior.
Yeah, prior agenda item. Yeah,
I gotcha.
yep. So this is, that page 2 that has the signatures is not part of this handout.
Okay,
So what will go out was the revenue enhancements, and on the backside of that is a reference then to the utility rate adjustment. So people see the combination of really what we're wrestling with and what we're talking about for revenues.
so did we actually approve this then?
No.
Okay.
No.
We will do
You
that.
gave constructive input, and it doesn't require any formal approval unless you
Okay.
desire it to be. You can if you would like. But this is more of the administrative report section, just to update you on the progress towards getting a formal fee adoption document in front of you, and some of our public outreach as we get there, which may lead to, more participation in the council meeting in May.
More to come.
So, Mayor Dory, if I hop to the next?
Yes.
The next one is one that I asked Megan Winter, our planning director, to put together for council. Just a short memo on the long range planning work that she is working on, and the accompanying interesting flow chart that goes with it. Is really just for your background reference. She went through this thoroughly with the Planning Commission last month, and I asked if she could synthesize it into a summary document for council. So this is just a FYI to really show the myriad of long-range planning efforts that Megan is keeping all the balls in the air on our behalf. They're mostly regulatory mandates, state level things that are pushed down to say that, by certain dates you shall. They do we do get a little bit of revenue that they offset some of the participation in this. So we do submit hours on certain projects here that have some reimbursement for time spent for certain communities. But I thought I did a really good job of showing what are unique, independent, long-range planning processes, and which ones are linked together in some way, shape, or form. And then how we're trying to package them to be efficient and how we process them through the Planning Commission, which are the pink left side of that chart. All of those have local code amendments that are objective if all the due dates work correctly, is that we put them more as packages to the Planning Commission rather than having, 4 to 6 separate legislative, type 3, type 4 hearings. And we instead package them because they're mostly not quite housekeeping, but they are targeted code amendments. They're not comprehensive, but when you put them all together, then we can run them through the Planning Commission pretty efficiently if all the dates work. And all the support and assistance that we have from other entities flow correctly. It's a challenge because every single box requires our input and some of our decision making, but also we require assistance from various entities that are helping shepherd this through at the state level. And then on the back of that is a DLCD handout that gets into a little more detail about the CFEC, as it's called, the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities ruling, which is, I think, was approved 2+ years ago. 2022. So it's been all cities at differing. It has different impacts based on your population, how large you are, about what all you had to do and what timelines.
They are having changed some of the language.
Yeah, it's a more recent addition to the complication is a term called words of concern that relate to maintaining compliance with new federal guidelines and funding requirements. Policies and legislation can no longer have certain words or have criteria based on certain categories from the recent changes at the federal level. So that's caused a lot of work. I think there are some really smart kind of overall, I think, somewhat neutral solutions to it, but it has layered on additional work from the group. That's that.
Well, it's a complicated statute anyway,
It is.
because the state says, okay, we want you to do this, go implement it. And the cities kind of go, okay, we'll see what we can do.
It's one of those unfunded mandates.
Yes.
Yeah, and they do have deadlines, and they they ultimately very much matter.
Yeah.
Just to sum it up is it's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of coordinating, and it's a lot of keeping Coburg interests in mind as they all step through, and that's takes up a lot of Megan's time, and she's doing a phenomenal job of keeping it all rolling and trying to keep us all up to date. Last item, I've got a couple, the city administration monthly reports. That was also in the red folder. The first item was just a reminder about budget kickoff next week. It came fast. We'll be diving in. So the first meeting is overview of the budget, kind of major trends, budget message, just looking at the city overall, some fund level discussion. And then the second meeting gets more into the department and program level, where department heads will also be there for Q&A and anything that of interest to the committee. And then back to council in June 10th for final review and adoption. So we're in the proposed column, or we will be next week in the proposed column of the budget. The budget committee with their review moves it to the approved column. And then when we're through at council in June, it moves it to the adopted column. And that's where we have the resolutions that lock in all of the budget appropriations.
When does the budget committee meet?
They are meeting next Tuesday, the 15th, and the fourth Tuesday, which is the 29th.
So that includes all of us.
Correct. Yes. And that was on the, and I have another reminder of that on here as well for the work sessions. I added those to the work session schedule that we talked about last month for those two budget meetings.
And I'm going to assume that's at the regular time.
Correct. 6 o'clock right here.
Okay. When I sort of glanced at it, I didn't see the date. So I was just making sure because I definitely don't want to miss it.
Good. We want to have everybody there. Yep.
You send out invitations on those meetings.
Yes.
What's that date again?
April 15th, next a week from today. And then
Wednesday.
the 29th, 2 weeks after that.
That's 19.
Can't forget the 15th ever.
Did I do that again a second time?
Yeah, it's
I was corrected and I cut and pasted. That is terrible. Thank you.
15th and 29th, right?
29th.
And the budget or work session is 2 weeks from
The 15th.
second.
Oh, there's one on the 22nd.
We will be together every Tuesday for the next month and a half.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
Sammy, I won't be able to be at the 22nd meeting.
And we all heard that. Yeah. There you go. You're sorry. You'll miss the meeting.
Yeah,
You probably won't be able to
understand
understand
me.
me.
yeah. You noticed I didn't talk.
Did you say PV, Port of Vallarta? Sorry.
That was the time.
That was a tough one. Okay.
So the,
Oh, Adam.
So yeah, the next
I'm
item
sorry.
that I wanted to highlight is the, an update on the Collector Street Phase 1. We talked a little bit about Coleman when we were talking about our SCA grant. As we crunch to get closer to the construction season, get the final design done, have meetings with the neighborhood, and work with the private utilities or the utility operators that have equipment and infrastructure in that project area, we are coming up on some roadblocks. And we, fortunately, as you recall, this project, we already have cash in hand. This was a fund exchange through MPO that really rarely gives us the opportunity to not have a funding due date that we typically have on projects. So the update really here is more than just an update. It's a little maybe a head nod check for everyone if there's a comfort level in delaying that project. I think we as a staff as well as branch feel that the project would be better suited. We actually don't know that we could make the dates anyway. So what we're looking at is pushing this to next February. We'll complete the final engineering design, have a bid packet ready to go, give the utility folks that are in the project area this summer to do it. Northwest Natural is the one that has the most in there, and Brian had conversations with them about how much work and effort and supply chain issues they have in order to complete that work, and also provides us really, I think, a smarter and ample amount of time to have more neighborhood interactions. We would be pushing the limits of the open house and notification. Gives us a chance to talk about the things we hit on last meeting of fences and other things in the way. Gives people time to contemplate how they want to move them and relocate landscaping. You know, they may want to do some of that stuff on their own before we ever touch it. I think, you know, from our perspective, it just gives us a much smoother project at, you know, and then it's speculative, but maybe not any change in pricing. We may be hitting peak tariff world, at least peak fear of tariff on bidding. We are talking with legal staff and others around the state about tariff specific language in our bid contracts, which is really interesting. I'm not sure how fruitful it ultimately is, but there is a lot of angst out there on, you know, supplies. You know, we are probably from an asphalt scenario, it's probably not too terrible, but it all kind of dominoes. So our ask, and I think it, you know, legally we are covered from a financial standpoint. We're not being, you know, we're not going to miss any deadlines to push this and give us a lot more room for outreach, a lot more actually can shift some of the pressure on branch to push them over to where we need them the most, which is Stallings on our water projects. To get that done, we do have a hard due date on that. So this kind of a late breaking assessment really leads us to thinking that we're far better off to delay slightly. It's about 8 months is all actually when it comes down to it. You just have been 8 months, and you can see a couple months, maybe 3, but 8. And that's
Well,
all- that's
bidding and having the
costs
construction
will
in
go up.
the middle of winter is not very conducive. I mean, that's usually these are construction seasons, so we're already pushing the back end of construction season. But we can push forward. As it is now, we would not be under construction until, like we said, for July. We can push that forward. It's really that question of, the speculative, are there significant price changes between a bid? That the bids would be in May is when they'd be preparing the bids and submitting the bids, and then we would be awarding in June. It is doable to stay on track, but and that's really bringing it forward in its direction. And if you're not comfortable with direction tonight, we don't have to do direction tonight. We may, I'm not sure what the window would look like. We would just push forward as we've previously talked about.
Counselor Smith, I have a question piggybacking on what Alan said with cost, but do you think that anybody bidding right now is going to be taking into consideration the impact of tariffs and costs for something that far out anyway?
Yes.
You think that the bids are going to be higher overall just because they're anticipating that, or does that not work that way?
It depends on the type of project. This one may not be as extensive because it's mainly, it's rock, it's asphalt. It's not high in some of those tariff items. Generally, in kind of our public sector world of public improvements, absolutely yes. This project is not as kind of doesn't meet all that criteria for being the highest level of concern for that. But absolutely, yeah. When we're bidding out installing, so that's steel building, that's it's supply chain, it's transformers, it's those kind of things that definitely are being impacted.
I personally, I don't mean to say that I know that it's a tough ask for you. I understand that, but I think we should push if we can, if we feel that we can comfortably do that without getting ourselves overworked or overextended and running around and adding a whole bunch of extra things to the plate. I think we should try and push if we can, simply because the cost issue will be with us and it's likely to rapidly change. Next month, next quarter, things could be radically different. So if we have the opportunity to at least put feelers out rather than this long delay, I think we should at least do that.
Yeah, again, just to say, we can, and even if the utility work, it extends weeks, beyond the start date, we still would be in the second window of the construction season. So we can. It's just now is the opportunity to defer if we wanted to defer it. So that's why I'm bringing it forward. It's, we're probably lean on the staff side. We lean a little 60-40 to deferring, but it is not problematic to maintain the schedule that we're on.
Well, I appreciate that. In that case, it would be my preference to push.
Counselor Engelbrecht.
From my perspective, not to go against what Councilor Bowman was saying, but this street, and maybe there's something I'm missing, but this Coleman Street to me is one of the streets in town that doesn't seem to have as many issues, at least from the perspective of the public and the people that live along the street, like in terms of the condition of the actual pavement itself. And so for that reason, I would be comfortable holding off. If it was a street like Skinner where it's got or other streets that have very serious issues, very serious potholes or serious problems with the pavement, then I would probably feel differently. But because this one, Coleman, is in pretty good condition, that's where I feel like to me, it would seem okay to hold off a little bit.
No, I would agree with you, but, and I'm not real familiar with the scope of the project, but aren't some of the improvements that are planned kind of traffic alleviating, speed alleviating? I mean, there's no street in town that people have had such an outcry about people driving fast up and down that street. And I thought some of those improvements were going to alleviate some of that. I may be wrong about that.
There's no specific speed cushions or traffic tools, traffic calming tools necessarily. It brings a lot more structure to the street in terms of the intersections have curbs to direct storm drainage, a lot more storm drains. There's a sidewalk. There's definitely a sidewalk, and that is kind of one of the attributes that is the primary probably attribute of a collector street in our approved street standards. Collector streets has a certain cross-section profile, a little bit wider pavement, travel lanes, park rows, which are, for storm drainage, and then at least one side sidewalk. And as you, the Mill Street portion, all in addition to being a collector, it is also the Coburg Loop Path designated route. So that sidewalk doubles as a multi-use, connector that ultimately fulfills the full connectivity of the loop path. So, and then the final piece, and I mentioned it in the last meeting, is while we don't have a deadline on these funds, and we do have it cash in hand, which is two excellent elements, it is restricted to the collector street system. So it can't be used on some of the other local streets, which is, as the mayor and I talked, that is always a bummer in kind of explaining to the public why that a street that doesn't have quite as extensive of degradation in the pavement itself is being replaced before a street that is in noticeably worse repair. That's a tough one.
Just to add to that, if it's branch engineering's time we're concerned about, I'm not concerned about it. We're paying them anyway. If it's Brian's time, that's a whole different matter. And if you're hung up on doing a lot of other things, I get that. But
no, it's not necessarily Branch's time that is lower on the list. They will spend the same amount. I mean, we'll be spending the same dollars on finishing the design and getting the bid set ready to go. My only point in that was they do all of our project work. We have a very tight deadline that Brian and I are worried about on the Stallings water projects. So yeah, it's in fourth or fifth place in terms of the benefit of deferring as it relates to Branch and their ability to focus their efforts over on Stallings instead of this. It's not a primary driver at all.
My concerns are utility work required by Northwest Natural and Pacific Power, and whether that can be done within our timeline. And also, I feel very, very strongly in terms of our ability for community outreach, having a town hall, letting people know what a collector street is, why it is important. I think there will be a lot of input from neighbors. That is a very complicated project, that collectors. In my opinion, and I'm certainly no street engineer.
Bill, I think my concern is if there is a deadline on the Stallings,
Yes.
I hate to
That's
see
number
us
3.
go
Yes.
over a deadline on that. And I
Right.
think that it's one of those things where your priority changes based on the timeline left to do each project. And if we have the reports we due tomorrow, do we work on the one that's due next year? Probably not. So I would be in favor of deferring it if it helps with the Stallings project and it relieves some staff time and some staff pressure.
I just wanted to add to what Adam was talking about the construction seasons. Due to multiple reasons,
this Collector Street project was going to be a late bid date, right? So most contractors have probably already got their summer work lined out. So this would be more like what we saw on Harrison Macy and North Willamette, where the contractor, that it was filler work for them, right? So it took a little, and we understood that the project took a little bit longer than we all had hoped. But we got a good price. So with all of that said, because we're bidding this late in the bidding season, we might get fewer bidders. The earlier you can bid a project in the year, the more competitive the bids are going to be because more contractors are going to be bidding it. So when we were discussing, kind of what this would cost us, there's no way to quantify this because you can't bid it twice, but I believe that the bid amount's probably either going to be the same or slightly less than if we would have bid it in May of 2025.
If we were doing the bid in February.
Yeah, that's correct.
You think
Yep.
that it would,
Yep.
I mean, your best guess.
It lines up with contractors, the construction season a little bit better to construct in May, June of 26.
Yeah, we're not voting on this, are we?
We need to give direction.
Well, yeah, that's the challenging part of bringing it in, that there is no real format for this. It's a previously approved and previously funded project. So it can be, this is where it's kind of in our joint bucket together. It's neither pure policy nor pure administrative. It's got a mixed bag there. What I didn't want to do is have it fall apart on us and be February without a discussion, or push forward when I knew there was this tiny window where we could have made that, had a conversation and deferred. So given that there isn't you could do a motion if you want to. It's not something that was formally on the agenda. It doesn't necessarily legally need one. Kind of, I guess, straw poll, head nod, just looking at, how important, we collectively think it is. And it's to push it forward. And as Brian said, it is speculative, can't bid it twice. We can't, in the revisionist history, we don't know. But
If you had the drawings, you could bid it twice. You could bid it now and say, "Oh, no, we don't want to do that," and then bid it again next year just to see what the difference is.
you don't get you don't get the benefit of knowing what the two are to then select the best. You're in order, right? And it would be poor form to put out for bid and not intend to select, but that would not help us in the long range, I wouldn't think. But
What you need from us tonight is direction, and I think what I'm hearing is defer. Yes.
I appreciate the challenge of kind of bringing this up the way we bring it up, but it's one of those that it's it moves, and we get new information daily, weekly, and trying to chart it out that hits as many boxes as we possibly can, and cost being definitely a large consideration, but so is community acceptance and a really well done finished product. And so we're hoping to blend all that together and land on an A, at least an A minus, but hopefully an A plus when we're all said and done.
You've got your direction.
Yep.
Defer.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
next.
Yeah, the very last one is one that is more of a heads up, just with City Hall. As we talked about at the CIP, we have several City Hall related capital projects pending that we pushed out a year. It won't be in this upcoming budget
proposed budget. We don't have them funded. So we have HVAC, significant HVAC work that is looming. We have ADA improvements that we touched on a little bit before the meeting started in passing. Work is being done on the design side of that, so we will have a design completed. The fix between the two and plus some flooring and surface work, we have significant capital coming to this building in the, not this coming cycle, but in the year after. So again, similar to the conversation about Coleman, what I'm hoping for is with plenty of lead time on this one is we also know we talked about debt service on this building. We also are in a unique position where this building has probably a much higher value than what we owe. So the idea being in this 12 or so month window before we revisit the CIP and revisit talking about the next year, a year from now's budget, to just be aware or kind of head nod again that staff be poking around at, is this the right long-term place for us? What are other conceptual solutions that may be able to leverage the equity in this building? We may come up with none. We may come back around and say, hey, it's time for these improvements. And if we're making $200,000 plus, dollars of improvements, the idea is we want to be somewhat certain that this is the place we want to be for a bit. And then no preconceived notions here other than, there could be some opportunities where we end up in a better budget position than our current loan that includes some interest only, and then some mini balloon payments coming up in the future that we talked about a little bit at the retreat. So it's more of an FYI that we think that there's value over the next 12 months as time permits to explore. It might dovetail in with our urban renewal conversation in the fall. That is not an uncommon place for public facilities and public buildings to be considered. There may be also some possibilities that a different city hall solution could save us money in the budget and also spur further economic development, be a component of something that moves the needle on the private development side that we may find value in as a community, additional rental housing, additional, mixed use development type things. Very, very speculative, very starter kit. But as discussions happen, it inevitably leads to, hey, are they selling City Hall? What's going on with City Hall? Yeah. And I did not want that to happen without at least throwing that concept by you all that I think it's worth poking around at. And that I can give kind of, updates as we go. And then hopefully, if something, excellent shows up at our doorstep, we'll present. My likely scenario is that there's 2 or 3 things we think about conceptually, and we have a work session winter, early spring, less than a year from now, but close. And we talk about what that looks like. Again, there's a nice window, and I'd like to have a bigger window than wait till the end and have to crunch some possibilities.
Would you perceive that if we had a new facility, it would be this size or larger?
Great question. Personal opinion without talking to architects and space needs analysis and all that stuff. No, I think it could be smaller. Purpose built. If it's new construction, purpose built. This is a pretty inefficient building. It's a nice building. It wasn't built for a public facility. We have unique needs. We have a lot of hallways. We have double stairways. There's a lot of things that this room is really nice sized. It's oversized. It's got the posts. We typically, as you can see, we don't use all of it very often. There are some other, there's linkages, there's the potential, we haven't talked with the fire district, at all formally. They are looking at, somewhere in the next 2 to 6 year window of a new fire facility. There could be some co-location conversations. I just think that there's opportunity to
evaluate all that stuff and just see what might be out there. And, you know, we are, public to private partnership kind of stuff. We're a little challenging. Everything's open to the public, right? All of our negotiations, except for limited exec session stuff. We are a very transparent partner, and we're a very slow partner, and a partner who doesn't have a whole lot of money. We have equity, which is part of bringing up the conversation to even think about, is leveraging that equity that sits on the balance sheet, not the budget.
What do we owe in this building?
Little under 500,000. With some kind of awkward payment system, not the end of the world, but awkward. And of course, that's primarily out of the general fund.
I was just a quick comment. I was gonna say that I hope when something changes, because it's a question of just when. I mean, this building is a lovely building aesthetically, but it's got a very weird, it's sort of a mishmash of purpose-built and not purpose-built. But I would hope that either the new facility down the line would either be one story or be fully accessible.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge driving force of a purpose-built, facility, is that's to me, those go naturally hand in hand. Obviously, there's legal hand in hand on new construction, but that is a challenge in a number of ways here, and not just the ramping at the front, because that begets another, and for a municipal court, it doesn't work. Awesome, it works. I mean, everybody's done a great job, and I'm the newest one here, right? Everybody's done a great job of making this facility work really well, and so it's not a poke necessarily at it. It's a fine default position to be in. There just may be opportunities that give us a lot more ripples, or maybe there isn't. But we have this window of a 12 to 18 months before we invest dollars in it. It just seems like it's smart, and maybe from a administration planning side, fun to think about what it could leverage beyond our budgets, beyond our operating costs. What does a civic building have an opportunity to leverage in the community? It's actually just that itself is a pretty good asset in partnering up. What a beautiful.
Brian just left.
Yeah, talk about high maintenance. Yeah.
Talk about a hole in the wall you shovel money into.
And with that, I think we've exhausted everything.
I do have one question on the concern report. Let's see. Okay, the current projects so under the citizen inquiries.
Oh, yeah.
We still have, no, that's inactive. So under the active, the light glare from Roberts Road, that's sort of been hanging out there for a while, or I've been hearing about it for a while. Have we had any conversations with the people there on Roberts Road, or?
I don't believe so. That one is lingering, and I will commit to something for next week to get out to everybody on that. I think there's some challenges of enforcement. What we have voluntary versus what we have as a true tool. So we'll need to carve a strategy out. But you're right, that's been lingering without any sort of resolution for too long. So we'll jump in on that.
The others are fairly recent, and I think are being addressed.
Yes.
Anything else for the good of the order? Liaison reports.
I have a quick one if you have time.
We do.
I'll try to make it quick. The Parks meeting was pretty jam-packed. A lot of things were discussed, so I'll try to hit the high points. David DeBeat, the AmeriCorps worker doing the Muddy Creek project, came and talked a little bit about the landscaping, and out of that, offered to work with him, help design how the plantings would be in Jacobs Forest Park rather than just linear. And he offered to meet with him and give some input to work with him to do the plantings so they're aesthetically pleasing as well, not just functional. And then they did discuss one of the tree fee as well as the park fee. I told them that I would relay some of the concerns I heard from them to council, and they were pretty typical of what some of ours were. There was questions as to whether $2 was actually enough. There was also a discussion about not putting in more parks without public input, and if we couldn't afford them, are we going to maintain or are we going to keep adding? How do we keep from continuing to raise fees and rates? Do we need to look more at reducing services? Would there be a plan to avoid continued raises? Helps with general maintenance. One of the requests was that since the park fee is a $5 fee, and Adam did a good job of filling in that, you know, parks actually cost more than mowing the lawn. There's the vehicles, there's all of that, that would be factored in. Some concern over the fact that that fee will go into the general fund and won't be used for parks. And so the request from one of the members was that there's good clarity as to how the parks money is actually spent, just to avoid wondering why is it in the general fund and nothing's getting done. And then there was also a point even by committee members that this wasn't improving anything. It was just trying to keep it the way it is and keep it from getting worse. And there was a lot of back and forth about whether or not they would make a recommendation. I kind of spoke up and they were saying they just trusted us. And I reminded them that we represent them and they represent the community, and it's important that we hear input so that after the fact, people aren't angry for our decisions because they didn't have input. And they did in a 6-5 vote with one, or 6-1 vote with one abstaining, that they do support the park fee and the increase in tree as a group. So
I would just add, Councilor Smith, that on the end there, that you got them to the finish line of actually having a vote, which was very appreciated, because it was, yeah, they were struggling with that. So I thought that went really well, and they had great questions. You know, just one note is, and we had this conversation with them at that meeting, is all parks revenues are general fund. The parks is general fund. So there is, I know that's, you know, revenues allocated for parks uses, but all of that is general fund revenue.
And that was one of the concerns about the recommendation. In the past, there had been money for parks, and then we found out it wasn't used in parks and there wasn't any money, and assured them we have people in town that have enough integrity to be honest with how these are used.
And the resolution will state it.
It's a bucket within the general fund.
Right.
That accountability.
And I think,
Yeah, well, most of our buckets seem to have holes in them.
and it was nice to have them actually. Group really struggles with, I think, realizing that their input is important and valued, and often they are worried that they're going to step on toes if they say something. So trying to get past that perception, would
Yeah.
your take on it?
Yeah, I agree. And it's really good in trying to put these things and make sure they realize that it's an advisory body to the council. That is the job. And I think I maybe started the conversation and yeah, you finished it up awesome. So it got him to the finish line.
Council Ingebretson,
Well,
anything from Lane Act?
Yeah, I was gonna mention, I hate to say this because it's kind of a negative, but I think it's important for probably to share. There was a project that was slated for improving Highway 126 between Eugene and Veneta, especially out by Veneta, near where the Fern Ridge Reservoir is. And unfortunately, as part of the federal budget cutting that has been happening recently, that $30 million was cut or stopped, or they're not going to be able to move forward with that project. So personally, I'm very disappointed at, the mayor of Veneta, I think was rightly felt that that was a really high priority project that needed to happen. There's a lot of safety problems on that road and a tremendous amount of congestion. And I think anybody that's driven out there recently can probably empathize with the folks in Veneta and of course, it's a highly used road by people regionally. So I think that was pretty disappointing to see that get cut. So sorry, that's kind of negative, but anyway.
Well, I think it's good for us to know and to understand that there are a lot of impacts locally that are coming from federal decisions. I know that Lane County was awarded several $1 million for a resiliency project, and that has now been at least held back. We don't know that those funds may become available later, but right now that's not on the table. And there had been a lot of work that had been done to get ready to move forward. So that's sort of, thinking that money was there, and it's no longer there. So that work is unfunded. I serve on the MPC committee, and ODOT is not sure in terms of funding. They don't think that they're getting cut, but they don't know. So that is yet to come, and there is a large transportation package that is in front of our local legislators. But it's very split. It's a partisan decision, and it's split on both sides, and neither side is wrong. I mean, to fund the transportation bill would mean increasing fees on motor vehicles, and that will impact all of us. And so, those that are for it are saying, well, we need this money to maintain. Again, it's maintain. It's not improve, but it's maintain our transportation system. And on the other side, the people that are against it are saying, yeah, well, none of our constituents can afford it. And that's not wrong either. I mean, there is no, unfortunately, we are in a situation there is no black and white. There is no right and wrong. It's very nebulous and squishy. And so that's kind of what I'm hearing from the MPs. Don't know. Hang on and watch. Councilor Lehman, have you been to any meetings?
Well, Megan gave a presentation at the last planning commission, and it was having to do with pretty complicated, as I recall, having mostly to do with state and regional regulations.
Which I think that was probably the information that was in the packet.
Yep.
I mean, much more in depth than that. Out there on lots of regulations. Councilor Wells, you get tomorrow night.
yeah, first time.
Yay, good. Councilor Bowman, anything on LTD?
Unfortunately, last I checked in, and this was just with Adam, there was a plan for some sort of community open house. I presume that's still in the works.
Yes, progress on that has been, Brandon at the Commons has agreed to host the site. So we're trying to have it be a co-hosted, co-sponsored or whatever with possibly Coburg Main Street, us, Community Foundation, really a community open house, not really a specific
Right.
city government policy type conversation. So the venue has been accepted and that's when we're building on that. I don't have an answer yet from the LTD side about when they want to plug us in for that, but TBD, it's coming.
Okay,
Yep.
and I can perhaps shoot off an email to say, I'm still here.
Probably wouldn't hurt. And I can do it at the same time and I'll copy you on mine and give them that information, but a two-pronger is probably a good idea.
Anything else? Counselor Myers, you
Later this month.
later this month.
For next month.
So next time, oh, good. We'll have even more reports. That'll be wonderful. All right, anything else for the good of the order? If not, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:23. Thank you all.